Hi there, I am Dark Shades, broadcasting out of the UK. Welcome to my channel. You're welcome to subscribe, share, comment, and dislike if you don't like what I'm talking about. Anyway, I am taking requests of topics that my subscribers or friends or acquaintances want me to talk about. So today I received this request, and it said, when getting married in later life, do we need to change our will? And do we need to get our families together and talk about it when it comes to entitlement? Well, the long and short of it is that when you get married, you definitely have to change your will. Well, the existing will, if you have one, is null and void. It is immediately cancelled from you get married. And if you don't make a new will, everything goes, your entire estate goes to your spouse. That's the long and short of it. If you make a new will and you want to leave stuff for your children, that's totally different. That provision will prevail if it's been made after the marriage. But if you haven't made a will, you've got married and you haven't made a will, and you suddenly die, your whole estate goes to your husband. That's the long and short of that. So there's no point your family getting together in entitlement. They have something called intestacy laws. And those intestacy laws dictate who gets what, where and when. Only if they haven't had an updated will. So that's the quick answer to that. But you need to know some other things that could affect whether or not you actually want to remarry. It might be better for you to cohabit later in life, or if you've married before, once you've watched this video, it's definitely made me think twice. So so if you've made a will, it will be immediately revoked or cancelled. If you want your children to still benefit, rewrite your will. Otherwise, everything, your entire estate, is automatically left to your spouse because the law of intestacy decides that. If your fiance was married before and has children under the age of 18, and there's some financial arrangements being done, and he may have defaulted on those financial arrangements or may not have, there might be some other financial arrangements between him and his ex-wife. It's best not to get married until all of that is fully resolved. It has implications. Not quite sure what those implications are. You need to see a lawyer or a solicitor. But the solicitors have warned against getting married when financial situations or financial agreements have not been resolved with the ex-spouse, and especially if there's children under the age of 18, you could find yourself in a precarious situation. So that's important to know. So if there's any maintenance or financial orders outstanding, you could be penalised in the long term. But like I said, see a family law solicitor. A cost of a new will depends on the complexity of financial situation. So if you've got, you haven't got, millions in the bank. You've just got a modest house. You might have a car, little bits of furniture, a couple of ornaments. Then you don't really have to worry too much. Your will isn't going to cost that much because all they'll say is, divide it between A, B, C, D, and E. So it's not going to cost that much, maybe about 250 quid. And you can also get those ones that you can do yourself. The pre-written ones. You can get them from Staples, anywhere. And you can just put your name, the name of the executor, sign it at the bottom, get it witnessed and dated, and then Bob's your uncle. That's, like I said, if you've got no, lots of assets or things that cost, that's going to cause friction. So if you remarry before resolving financial matters in your divorce, you could be prevented from applying for a financial order if you ever need to, or a property adjustment order. And this is under the Matrimonial Causes Act 1973. It's quite sad that when you think about getting married, you have to think about the end of a marriage, that it might not last. I think that's quite sad, because when you're getting married, you want to get married and stay together forever. That's the whole point. But then, you know, what they're saying, the statistics are that 1 in 5 men split for the second time as they're getting older, in their second marriage. Growing divorce among older people. 1 in 8 divorces occur when a man is in his 50s. So, you know, you have to have that at the back of your mind. God forbid it doesn't work out. What am I going to do? How is it going to impact me? And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. But if it has financial consequences that leave you homeless or leave you without anything when you started with something, because that equality of assets in divorce still applies, that 50-50, whether or not they're contributing or not. I mean, there are some safeguards, providing you don't put anything in joint names. There are some safeguards, but you know, the courts will look at it to see whether or not the spouse has been contributing in some way, in any way, how much they've been contributing. And if they've been substantially contributing, they are entitled, as long as they can prove that they've been giving you money, they can be entitled to a financial settlement. Okay, so the English law does not exclude property owned before marriage when splitting up assets on a divorce. So supposing you get married and your husband doesn't have anything and you have a house and your marriage lasts maybe about 3 years. I think they had a case of, what was the case of? McFarlane and Miller? Oh, I can't find it now. I think it was Miller and McFarlane. Yeah, Miller and McFarlane divorce. They weren't even married 3 years. And that turned out pretty nasty with that settlement. And the thing is that if the person you're marrying doesn't have any assets, he could still be entitled to 50% of your assets under the Equality Act, the Equality of Assets Act. So, you know, there's a lot to think about when you're getting married in older age, in older life. So if you get married before resolving financial matters in your divorce, you could be prevented. I've said that. Protect yourself if you marry later in life by disclosing honestly financial issues. So you sit down, you have a talk. Are there any financial issues outstanding? Does either of you have any debts? Be honest about your debts. Be honest about any financial agreements. Be honest about any county court judgments. Just be totally honest about your financial situation. Then you can both decide what you want to do about it, how you're going to sort it out before you get married. So everything is fully settled. Okay? Consider retirement plan rights. I'm not quite sure what that means. I guess if you've taken out a retirement plan, maybe it's a bit like a will. Who gets that? But I think retirement, anything to do with retirement, goes to the spouse anyway. I don't think it can go to your children. I'm not sure. Anyway, set up a trust. That can protect you. You can set up a trust. I think it costs between $12.50 and $14.50. I mean, at last count, it might have gone up, depending on how much money you want to put in the trust and how you want to protect it. Keep your assets separate. Don't do any joint bank accounts or joint properties and all that kind of stuff. Keep everything separate. That doesn't mean that the court won't award anything, but it does protect you to a certain degree if things are kept separate. And the irony is that when you You know, like people get married now to stay in the country. And one of the requirements is that you put everything in joint names. Look at this. When you put things in joint names, like you put your bank account in a joint name, they have to be on the lease of any property that you own and stuff like that. If it doesn't work out, that spouse could easily take you for 50% of your assets, even though they came in with nothing. Could easily do that. So if you're not marrying for love and you're marrying to help somebody else, you've got to be really careful. That happened to somebody I knew. Well, I didn't know her that well, but she had married someone from the Caribbean, and she was with him for like 6 to 7 years. Not even, like, I think they get their indefinite leave to remain after about 3 years or 5 years. Anyway, he waited until it couldn't be revoked. I think he waited until he got his citizenship. And then he shopped her for 50% of her house. She died not even long after. I think it was the stress. She had to remortgage the house and give him 50%. So when you're trying to help people out, that's what I'm talking about. Helping people out, getting married. You can't take marriage lightly. Especially in the UK, you get screwed. Royally screwed. If you're not getting married for the right reason and you have assets. You have a home. That they didn't even have a mortgage. She didn't even have a mortgage on her home because she was doing fostering. Not even a mortgage. She ended up remortgaging to give him 50%. So marriage is not something you take lightly. If both of you have assets and you've got equal assets and you're both more or less on the same playing field, then it's not going to make that much difference. You kind of leave with what you came in with. But if one person doesn't have anything and you have something, you have to really, really think. Marriage is a wonderful thing. I know, and regardless how old we get and how modern we become, people still want to get married. But you just have to better make sure you're marrying the right person. And how do you know if you're marrying the right person? Because sometimes people make excuses and they rationalize bad behavior. And they marry even though they see all of these funny signs. So it's about not rationalizing bad behavior. And it's about not ignoring the red flags. Anyway, I'm going off the subject. So, update your will, like I said. List all your premarital assets. That could be any equity in the house, any pension funds, any savings, any trusts. I'm not quite sure how that helps, but that was one of the advice that I saw. So maybe it might help mitigate them from getting 50%. They might be able to get 20 or 30% if you can show what you had before you got married. Prenuptial agreement, they don't work in the UK apparently. Prenuptial agreement, for those of you who do not know, they do it a lot in America. It means that you sign this prenuptial agreement before you get married, and you basically go into the marriage, and you come out of the marriage with what you went in with. You can't take anything about what your spouse has. If your spouse is a millionaire and you are a waiter in a restaurant and you separate, you can't get any of his money. Okay, and vice versa. So that's what a prenuptial agreement does. But apparently in the UK, it doesn't come under UK law. So, and if you do one in the UK, so there might be some validity, you might be able to get some concession. It needs to be signed 21 days in advance of getting married. So maybe, like I said, it might be a bit like you're listing your premarital assets. They might not get 50%, they might get 20%. Because you've done the prenup, it's been signed by both, but they should be entitled to something as long as they can prove that they've been contributing. A lot of this stuff is about proving what they have been contributing. if they haven't been contributing squat. And anytime, you pay money, man and wife or boyfriend or girlfriend, if you pay money, do it through a bank transfer. Don't do it with cash. Always do it through a bank transfer so you have a record. Sometimes I watch these Judge Judy shows and they'll say, oh, I used to pay her £570 a month, a week or something for the rent. And Judge Judy will say, so have you got any record of that? Oh, no, I'd pay her in cash. She wanted cash. It's not good enough. You've got no proof. You've got no evidence. And even though you want to go into a marriage or a relationship with trust, believing it's going to last forever, you still have to cover your back. Sadly enough, in these days and times, you still have to be sensible and do things. Marriage is a business. People don't think of it as a business, but it is actually a business. You're investing your time, you're investing money, you're investing resources. And so treat it like a business. Keep accounts. And some people say, oh, well, I bought that for you. I didn't think I'd need a receipt. I remember I did somebody a favour and I allowed them to stay in my home for a little while under the guise that they could, just use the room until they got their home. But I didn't make an agreement. I just said, look, you can stay here until, your tenants move out of your house. What did he say to me? When it came up time when I thought he was going to leave, did we have an agreement? Did we sign any contract? And this was somebody I knew very well. So regardless of how you trust somebody or like somebody or even love somebody, still do things properly. Don't let your emotions rule your head. Let your head dictate what you need to do and safeguard yourself. Okay, so cohabitees have no guaranteed rights to ownership, so they don't get squat if you're living with somebody. But if they can prove that they've been contributing, they are entitled to something if for some reason you die or if you break up. If they've been living with you and paying half of the mortgage, and they can prove they've been paying half of the mortgage, they should get something back if that relationship breaks up. And they would get something back. But they won't get like the 50% like a married partner would, but they will get something. Financial claims depend on circumstances. That's for cohabitees. They do not share the same legal rights as married couples. English law does not exclude property owned before marriage. I think I said that when splitting assets on divorce. Anything you owned in your own name may be distributed if you get divorced. So like I said, you could have your house in your own name. If you're married and you break up, that person can demand 50% of it or whatever. So yeah, I hope that helped that person who sent me that request. It's not nice when you're thinking about marriage and you have to think about the worst case scenario, but it's best to think about the worst case scenario, mitigate against it, and then you can go into it with your eyes fully opened, both of you, knowing exactly what to expect, what will happen in the worst case scenario. So you're not going in there all lovey-dovey, oh yeah, we're getting married, oh, I'm in love with him, and then 2 twos down the line, everything's gone tits up, and you find yourself in a little room somewhere when you had your house, and that goes for men and women. I know when I used to do my Talking Blues forum, one man, he said he would never, ever let a woman move into his house because he had a house and he took on a lady who was disabled. And I don't know how long they were together, but they were there for about 2 to 3 years. Anyway, something happened and the relationship ended. And because she was disabled, even though it was his house, she had the right to stay in that house until She until it couldn't get sold, until she found somewhere else to live. And did she rush to find anywhere to live, please? No. She just pitched herself in the man's house. So, you know, it's hard. It's really, really hard. Because, you know, you do things with the best of intentions. You do things with sincerity. And there are people out there who don't have the same intentions. So you just have to safeguard yourself and pray on it, hope for the best. And yeah, I mean, I hope that, you know, anybody who gets married, it's going to last. It doesn't even come to this. But at least you know up front what to expect. And I hope you found that helpful. Bye-bye.